From athletes to authors, entertainers to innovators, we connect with those who help shape our culture. Join us in revealing stories of their lives and backgrounds, their triumphs and tragedies that molded them into who they are today. Authentically off-script and personally illuminating, this is Audibles with Jason Scarborough. This week on Audibles, Philip Gunn, Part 1.
So January 27th, 1963, that's when we start writing your story. So how would you describe growing up?
I had a great childhood. My father and mother were from a little town in Leake County, Mississippi, about an hour from here, called Lena, Mississippi. Actually, my daddy was from Tuscola, which is out from Lena. Many people may remember Lena because they used to have an enormous 4th of July celebration. At one time, it was the second largest 4th of July celebration in the state, behind the reservoir, I think. It was a regular political stop for anybody running for office. It was almost like the Neshoba County Fair. You had to go to Lena on the 4th of July. That's where my mother and daddy were from, and that's really where I lived for the first 5 years of my life. When I was born, my daddy was a student at Southern Miss, but 6 months later he graduated and we moved back to the Lena, Tuscola area. I was surrounded by grandmothers and aunts and uncles. It was a great small town place to live and grow up. All the extended relatives helped take care of me and raise me up, and it's kind of my second home, really. We moved away from there when I was 5, moved to Ridgeland. I went to the 1st through the 3rd grade there, and then eventually ended up in Clinton. By the time I was 9 years old, my mother got a job teaching school over in the Edwards area. And so Clinton was kind of a halfway point. My father worked downtown, my mother worked in Edwards, and Clinton was kind of a halfway point between those two spots. So that's how we ended up in Clinton. And I consider Clinton my hometown. It's really where my childhood, at least as much of it I can remember, that's where it began. But Lena and the Tuscola area will always be my second home. We went up there regularly. It's a country town. We farmed, we went to church, we did all the things that you knew in small towns, and really was formative, foundational to establishing my beliefs. And I will say this, my wife has told me that she's never seen a family as close as my family. She did not grow up with that. She grew up in Texas, and her family was not particularly close. And we met. I like to joke with her. She did not grow up in a Christian home, and she did not become a Christian until she turned 21. And a week later, she met me. So I like to tell her that once she got right with God, the blessings just started rolling in. She hates it when I say that. But when she came and spent time with me and my family and said, y'all just enjoy being together. I had one little sister, so a mama, daddy, and a little sister. And when we were together, we played games. My daddy loved Rook. I don't know how many people know how to play Rook. It's a card game. We played board games. And so many families today, they get their supper and they sit down in front of the TV and they watch it. We didn't do that. We sat around the dinner table and visited and talked about our day and spent time establishing relationships. And then when I came home from college, again, we didn't sit there and watch TV. We played games and we spent time together. My daddy was a great hunter, great outdoorsman. He actually played basketball in college. He was a great athlete, but he loved to hunt. Quail was his main love, but we hunted everything. So my best memories with my father growing up are the times that he and I would go out. We'd hunt quail, we'd hunt dove and squirrel, and that Thanksgiving time of the year, everything is open season. You can just walk into the woods and shoot whatever moves, rabbits, squirrels, dove, quail, deer, whatever. So we had great memories doing that. My mother was a school teacher, a voice teacher actually. She was a great singer and taught people how to sing. She taught choral school music at Clinton and some in the Jackson Public Schools. I know I'm a proud son, but she was really good. She was the featured soloist in just about every choir she ever sang in. I like to tell this story on her. When she was about 20 years old, she was in the college choir at William Carey down in Hattiesburg, and they took a summer choir tour up through the Midwest and performed all along the way. And she was the featured soloist in the choir. They were in St. Louis, and when she finished singing, a guy walked up and said, "You have one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. I would like to show you around St. Louis while you're here." And she said, "Great, I'll go with you." And he took her to a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game. And I have the scorecard from that game. They played the San Francisco Giants that day. Willie Mays was playing center field for the Giants. Willie McCovey was at first base. Stan Musial was playing for the Cardinals. And I still got that scorecard that she brought home from that game. Anyhow, she eventually met my father and they married. But I always like to say that if that guy's name in St. Louis who took her out was named Bush, as in Anheuser-Busch, B-U-S-C-H. So I always like to say if that relationship had worked out, I could have been a beer man. If I'd have been a beer man, I wouldn't be here today, I'll tell you that. But those are just some fun stories from my upbringing and my parents, a little bit about my background. My little sister was my biggest fan, probably the person who was as closest to me as anybody. She loved me. I will tell you, this is an example, when we were children and it was night and she'd get scared, rather than like most children going and getting in bed with mom and daddy, she came and got in bed with me. That's how close my sister and I were as children. So I had a great upbringing, great family. And as I said, my wife said she's never seen a family as close as we were.
I've heard you say that your parents were your heroes and your mentors.
Yes.
What best illustrates that point?
Well, I think it starts with how I came to be. I will share this just very candidly. My parents became pregnant with me out of wedlock. And they chose to move forward with marriage and were married for 25 years until they died, and exhibited a great Christian upbringing for me. They were involved in my life. They made sure I had everything I needed, not everything I wanted, and we weren't rich by any means, but I never went without the things that were necessary in life. And I'm not just talking about material things. I'm talking about emotional, educational, psychological support that they provided for me. I was very active in sports growing up. I played football, basketball, and baseball. They were at every game. They encouraged me in school. They encouraged me in the activities that I did. They encouraged me in the student government, which is kind of where I got my political start. You know, starting to serve as a homeroom representative in the 7th grade to the student council, and then the student council president in high school, the student body president. And they were just incredibly supportive of me and my sister all throughout our upbringing, and provided us with the stereotypical great American childhood home that I think so many of us long for today and wish we could see in action today across our country.
Sports played a big part in your life. What impacts have you seen throughout your career and even today that the impact that sports played?
Well, I think there are great lessons to be learned in the sporting world. I started as a 6-year-old playing basketball. My daddy was a basketball player. As I said, he played in college. When I was 8 years old, I started playing baseball. And back then, we didn't have enough kids that you just played with the 8-year-olds. Little League was 8 through 12. And we're playing 12-year-old boys. And I'm an 8-year-old standing up there trying to hit. And they were hitting me. And you learn toughness. When we played football in the yard, we didn't have pads. We didn't have helmets. And it was everybody in the neighborhood playing. And I'm out there at 6 years of age playing against 12-year-olds, and they would throw you down. And you hit the ground hard. And you learn how to shake that stuff off and get back up and get in the game. So the teamwork came in incredibly valuable. That's an incredibly valuable trait that I learned, particularly in politics. You've got to learn how to work with other people. And in the world of sports, sometimes you have teammates that don't pull their weight. And there have been times when I probably didn't pull my weight on the football team or the basketball court. I gave out, and others come alongside of you and help move the team forward. And you've got to learn how to be a good teammate, do your part. You have to learn toughness. You've got to learn resilience. You have to learn how to overcome pain and difficulty. And those are just all tremendous lessons that we get from being involved in athletics, regardless of what sport a person plays. When I came along, all we had was football, basketball, and baseball. They don't have the other stuff that they have today. So that's what we did. And it was a great social outlet. Everybody played. It's what we did. All the guys played football, and we learned to develop friendships and relationships that way. So,
don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
It has often been said that home is where the heart is. It's where hard-working and dedicated people form the fabric of a thriving community. At Covington County Hospital, it's our priority to help keep our community safe, healthy, and moving. With our primary care clinics and services, we are working to keep you healthy. Because home is where the heart is. Home is where family matters. Covington County Hospital, where your health care matters.
At Atmos Energy, we believe affordable, reliable, and efficient natural gas is essential to achieving a low-carbon energy future. We're committed to helping protect the environment by providing smart choice solutions to help customers reduce energy use and lower their carbon footprint. Get a rebate up to $600 off qualifying high-efficiency natural gas appliances, smart thermostats, and weatherization upgrades. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
100 years ago, there were a lot more of us. Today, we're using the latest technology to make sure not one seed, not one drop of water, not 1 inch of this farm goes to waste. We want to be here for the next generation of Mississippians, ours and yours. Donate at farmfamiliesms.org to help us spread the word, or find us on Facebook. The Farm Families of Mississippi, our work fuels the world.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
Talk about sports, and you excelled at sports. I want to make sure I get this right. You were the only senior at Clinton High School to play football, basketball, and baseball in that 1980 season. That was a special season for you guys. The Arrows won what was known then as the state championship in the Little Dixie Conference days. We were talking about that before the interview. The Arrows finished number 1 in the UPI coaches poll that season. You see you smiling. You're still proud about that. What was that moment like for you early on? You've accomplished a lot in your life, but early on as, hey, a kid that's quarterback in the state championship football team, what was that moment like?
I think that little team we had, if there was one thing that could describe that team, it was heart. There's always this running debate in Clinton, where I grew up, between basically 4 teams. The 1972 team, which had a lot of guys who played pro football on it. The 1977 team, which won undefeated. The 1980 team, however, won the state championship. And then a few years ago, we had Cam Akers, you may remember him, 2016 team, which was phenomenal. There's always a debate about which one of those teams was the best. And I will tell you, we didn't have a lot of great athletes. We were not particularly gifted or skilled. But I will say we had more heart and more of a desire to win than any of those other teams. And that's what propelled us to the victories that we had. Now, we were talking earlier about the only game we lost was to Brandon in 4 overtimes by 1 point because we missed an extra point. That team, and to be the leader of that team, be the quarterback of that team, was particularly special because these guys looked to me to help make the right call at the line of scrimmage, to make the right reads on the plays, to make sure we got the ball into the hands of the person who had the best chance to score. And that lesson can be laid over to politics. Same thing. You're called on to lead. You're called upon to assemble a unit of people, of votes, to move your state forward, to pass legislation, to get things accomplished. And you got to get the ball in the right hands or in the hands of the right people who have your best chance to give you success on the politics. And you can lay that over to anything: business, people who are CEOs of companies, government, college presidents, whatever. They're all called upon to use that same skill to try to move an entity, an organization, or to accomplish some sort of goal for everybody.
Don't you think it's more impressive? You talked about you guys didn't have the most talent. Don't you think it's even more impressive that you didn't have as much talent? A team that can come together like that to achieve, in this case, in your case, a state championship. Don't you think that's more impressive, or what's your stance on that?
Yeah, that's the reason I always argued the 1980 team was the best team in Clinton.
There you go.
So it's kind of a fun debate that we always have. I used to jog with a fella that was on the 77 team, and they went undefeated, you know. Yeah. Well, we almost did, but we didn't. We were 1 point shy of going undefeated. So there was this rollicking, fun debate that goes back and forth between the two of us about which team was the better team. But we had a great year that year. Again, that was the only state championship team that Clinton had until 2016. So that was almost 40 years later before they had another one.
So what was next for Philip Gunn after Clinton High School? What were the steps for you after that?
Well, I had a scholarship to play football at Mississippi College, and I went there one semester. Loved Mississippi College. It was a great school, still is a great school. But I grew up in Clinton. And I'm thinking, you know, if I go to school here, this is all I will ever know is Clinton, Mississippi. There were two men in my hometown who were Baylor graduates, and they both believed that I ought to play football at Baylor. Now, I always wanted to play Division I football, and it was just a dream of mine to take my chance at that. So I transferred to Baylor at Christmas of my freshman year, and then finished my degree there, played football, walked on, tried to play football at Baylor. I will tell you one story that kind of encapsulates my athletic ability. There's a lot of difference between a high school athlete and a college athlete. I remember the first play I ran in college as a quarterback was a handoff to the running back. I said, "Hut," I got the ball, and I turned to hand it to him, and he was already through the hole.
Oh, God.
I hit him in the butt with the ball. That's how fast it was. And I realized I've got to pick it up. This game moves a whole lot faster. One day in practice when I was a freshman, they put me in to run the offense, and it was a running play for the quarterback, and I ran out to the left side, and it opened up 80 yards of green grass. There was nobody over there. And I took off, hard as I could go. And I got down there about 20 yards, and a nose tackle chased me down and tackled me. And I came back to the huddle, and the coach said, "Now, that's a good read. That's the way to run that play. But I know you're a freshman. When you turn that corner, don't be afraid to run fast now." I said, "I was running fast, Coach." And it doesn't get any better than that. That kind of encapsulates my athletic ability on the college level. So I tried to play for 3 years there. Loved that time on the team and made some friendships there. I never did really play at all. When I became speaker in 2012 here in Mississippi, y'all may or may not realize that's the first time a Republican had been speaker since 1876. First time in 136 years that a Republican occupied the office of speaker in Mississippi. So one of my former teammates at Baylor thought it would be cool to nominate me for an alumni award. They give out like 10 different awards each year. Alumnus of the Year, Young Alumnus of the Year, Public Servant of the Year, Preacher of the Year, things like that. Well, I got the Public Servant of the Year award. So they brought us in for homecoming, had a great banquet, celebrated us, and then at halftime of the football game, they took us down on the field to give us our little medallions for being Public Servant of the Year. I told people after that ceremony that I spent more time on the playing surface during that award ceremony than the whole time I was on the football team at Baylor. So that kind of encapsulates what happened. So I go to Baylor, spent 4 years there, graduated, met my wife. She's from Texas. When I finished at Baylor, I came back to law school at Ole Miss, dragged her back to Mississippi. It was a culture shock for her, but she has now adjusted, and we've been here for working on 38 years now. So she loves Mississippi, and it is now our home. We've raised all of our children here. Moved back in 1989, began practicing law, and we now have 4 children, raised all 4 of our kids here in Mississippi, and they're all grown. And 3 of them live here in Mississippi. So we're very proud of our Mississippi connections and our Mississippi roots.
What was it about the legal profession that was so curious to you that kind of pushed it over the edge for you to say, all right, that's what I'm going to pursue? What was it?
Well, two things. One is I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And in 1985, when people didn't know what they wanted to do, they always went on to further school. So I just went to law school. But people also said that you ought to be into politics, and the best way to get into politics is to go to law school. So those were kind of the two impetuses that caused me to go into law school. I didn't have a driving passion to be a lawyer necessarily, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do and felt like that was a path that I could like and enjoy. So I went to law school and got a degree. Came back and started practicing law.
I read that you were a waiter a year before.
I was.
Were you a good waiter?
I will tell you that I think everybody ought to have to wait tables.
Really?
Every individual ought to have to serve in some sort of customer service job. It will give you just a tremendous life teacher. You have to learn to be patient and kind. You have to learn to meet the demands of people sometimes who can be unruly and who are impatient themselves. The way you behave and treat them is going to affect how much tip you get. And it just is a great teacher. I think I've said this many times. Everybody ought to have to wait tables, and every elected official ought to have to work the polls. They ought to have to work and see how difficult it is to run an election. I did it myself once, and I have great respect for the people who run the elections. It is a difficult, demanding task. Fortunately, they only have to do it one day a year. But waiting tables was a tremendous teacher for me. I have great empathy now for those who are waiters and waitresses and know what they're going through. And that just gives you a great perspective on life and what's important. I just think it's something everybody ought to have to do. I did that for 8 months before I started law school. Had a number of famous people. This was in Waco, Texas, when I finished at Baylor. I stayed out there and waited tables for a little while. And I waited on Janie Fricke, who was a country music star back in the 80s. Reba McEntire came in one night. Bum Phillips, the old coach for the Houston Oilers. Parnell Roberts, a lot of people don't know that name. He was Adam Cartwright on Bonanza. Then he became Trapper John M.D. Joan Jett. Those are some of the people who came in to the restaurant when I was waiting tables. So those are fun stories to tell people, you know.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
The fabric of any community is its people. It's the commitment to hard work and to be our best. It's where you know your neighbor by name. It's where family is important. At Covington County Hospital, we are your family and friends. That's why your healthcare is important to us. From emergency room visits to primary care to behavioral health, we want to make sure that healthcare is available when you need it. Covington County Hospital, where your healthcare matters.
Mississippi's farmers love what they do, producing food and products for you and your family to enjoy. But we know this land is not just ours, it's yours too. That's why our farmers maintain this soil, keeping it rich and bountiful. We are sustaining this land so it will be useful to feeding generations to come. Donate at farmfamiliesms.org to help us spread the word, or find us on Facebook. The Farm Families of Mississippi, our work fuels the world.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
When it comes to choosing energy for your family and your home, make the smart choice with natural gas from Atmos Energy. It's efficient and reliable energy that's essential for today and generations to come. You can count on affordable natural gas to help you save money and keep you comfortable while fueling your dream home. So make the smart choice and talk to a builder today about including natural gas. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
was the most interesting? Is that a good way to frame that? Did you ever have any interactions with any? I mean, you're waiting on them, so you had to.
Yeah, Janie Freaky was incredibly nice. She asked me about myself and who I was and what I was doing and what my plans were, and gave me an autographed picture. Reba McEntire was very nice. Reba McEntire spoke at Mississippi College last year. They invited her for the scholarship banquet in 2020. COVID hit, she couldn't come. But she said, I will make it up. I'm going to honor my commitment. I will be there. So she came last year. I had told this story to the president of MC. I said, when I found out Reba McEntire was coming, and I said, oh, I waited tables on her one time back in 1985. He said, oh, wow, you got to tell the story. I said, well, not much to it. She came in, and I didn't bother her. And she was just getting her career started then. She was not a huge name yet. I think she may have released her first album at that point. I just knew who she was, but she had actually opened for someone else. So that's how, she was up and coming then. So I gave her service, and there was nothing about the whole episode. But when he said, you got to introduce her, I thought, well, I got to come up with something a little more interesting than that. So I embellished a little bit and made up a little story to introduce her. And I told the fact that I said, well, this guest speaker tonight is someone we could celebrate on a number of levels. First of all, she is the great American success story. She grew up in Southeast Oklahoma on a farm, on a ranch, doing daily chores, pulling together, the great American work hard type story. Then she got discovered by singing the national anthem at the county fair, and the rest is history. So we could celebrate the fact that she's the great American success story. Or we could celebrate her television success, and then I rattled off all of her television accomplishments. Or we could celebrate her music success, and I rattled off all the music accomplishments. I said, but that's not why I'm most excited tonight. And I tell this story. In 1985, I waited tables on her, and I gave her great service. And we had a great time of visiting together. It was late at night and wasn't a whole lot going on, and I got to know her and she got to know me. And both of us were at the beginning of our careers back then. And then it came time for the tip. And she looked at me and she said, I'm just getting my career started, and this is all I can do for the moment. But if I ever make the big time, I'll make it up to you. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's the night. The big time has arrived. Well, she's backstage when I'm telling this story. And she says, so she turns to her person with her, she says, give me $10, give me $10. So he gave her a $10 bill. So when she walks out on stage, she hands me this $10 bill and hugs my neck and, says thank you. Anyway, it was fun and neat. And she sent me a note the next week, said it's the best introduction I've ever had.
Wow.
So I took my picture with her and the note that she wrote and the $10 bill, and I framed it and got it in my office. And that's a great story to tell people now.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
But she was pretty witty. She didn't know that was coming. And to say, I want a $10 bill and to come out and give that to me, that was pretty witty on her part.
Oh, if people watch her on The Voice now, she holds her own. She gives it to people. She does.
But she was as genuine and down to earth of a person as you'll ever meet. I got to spend a lot more time with her at MC that night, and she's just a regular old person. She's not caught up in the fact that she's a superstar, and she's just a real person. So that was a lot of fun.
I'm going to do my best to make the uncomfortable segue to while you were at Ole Miss. It was a real difficult time for you.
Yeah.
While you were at law school at Ole Miss, I believe your parents and sister were in town.
Correct.
To visit, and they perished in a car accident.
Right.
Drunk driver. You're at law school. You're trying to get your life started. How did you pick up the pieces? And I've heard you talk about your faith. How did you pick up the pieces, though, and move forward after that?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know that I have any great real answer to that. People who are old enough will remember the day and the time where we used to pull our car tags down and put gas in behind the car tag. That car had a gas tank right below the trunk. It was just right there. And then when they got hit from the rear, they tended to explode. And that's what happened in this particular instance. They came up May 15, 1988. They came to Oxford to see us, and drunk driver hit them from the rear. The car blew up, killed all three of them. So in the beginning of this, I told you I grew up with my parents and my little sister. So I didn't have any other siblings.
Right.
This was my whole family at one time. And I also said, my wife has said she's never seen a family as close as we were. So we go back to what I talked about in the beginning, the integral role that my family, my parents, and my sister played in my life. And then to have them just jerked away from you like that was particularly traumatic and devastating. My parents were 46 at the time. My sister was 20. I was 25. So it occurred very early in my life. Fortunately, I had been married for about a year when that happened. And my wife was my rock. She stood by me. She was patient with me. She didn't demand anything from me. She just stood by me and supported me as I dealt with the grief of all that. Surrounded by family and friends, I've told people all the time, the thing that meant the most to me during that time were people who would just come by to say, I'm your friend and I'm praying for you. I had friends that drove from Baylor and they sat in the corner of the funeral home, never said a word, but they were there. It just their presence, gave me strength. So people never know what to say in a time of a funeral. It's always an uncomfortable, awkward thing. And I tell people all the time, just going and being seen is the best thing you can do for someone who is going through a tragedy, just knowing that you care enough about them to be there. And also another thing that meant a great deal to me is when people would come up and tell me stories about my family. They would say, let me tell you what your dad did for me one time. Let me tell you what your mom did. Your mom gave me $20 one time when I was in school because I was poor. Your sister did this for me. That made me think their life mattered and it counted. And that was uplifting to me. For anybody who may be wondering, how do you deal with people who go through that? Those are some things that were meaningful to me. I did learn everybody grieves differently. And what worked for me may not work for the next person. But those were things that meant a lot to me. Ultimately, though, as you mentioned, it is my faith. My parents raised me in a Christian home. And as Christians, we believe that every one of us is a fallen human being. Every one of us is a sinner. And that's just not, that's borne out in the way we live. Did anybody have to teach you how to lie? Did anybody have to teach you how to steal or be unkind or be selfish? No, people did not have to teach us those things. Those things come naturally. We are naturally born sinners. But people did have to teach us that lying is wrong and we shouldn't do it. They did have to teach us that stealing is wrong and we shouldn't do it. The things that we do that violate Scripture. So we are naturally sinners. And we, because of that, are separated from God. I believe that is what the Bible says, and I believe it. Because of that, there's no way for us to have a relationship with God but through His Son Jesus, who came and lived the perfect life, did not sin, and allows us to coattail ourselves, if you want to put it that way, with Him and get credit for what He did. He lived that perfect life, and He allows us to have credit for that, and we are deemed righteous. God, because of the sacrifice of Christ, tells us not only are our sins forgiven, but we are deemed righteous. There's a two-pronged benefit to being a believer in Christ. The Bible tells us that if we believe that, then we will spend eternity with God. That is the hope that we cling to as Christians. So I believe my parents and my sister, all of whom were believers, I believe they are today in heaven with Christ, enjoying the benefits of heaven. I believe they don't want to come back to this fallen, broken world. And I believe that one day when I die, that I will be rejoined with them. For whatever reason, the Lord left me here on this earth. My wife and I rode around that morning with them in that car. We went to church. The day before, we rode around in Memphis in that car. But for whatever reason, the Lord waited till Lisa and I were out of the car to let that accident happen. And so He left us here on this earth for a reason. I continue to try to live my life in a way that honors Him. I am certainly not perfect. But when you ask, how do you get through something like that? It is the hope we have in Christ and in the Bible that makes me believe that I'll be reunited with them one day. One of my best friends just lost his daughter last week, 38 years old, to cancer. And I went immediately. I remember how much it meant to me for people to come to me. He's in Birmingham, and I took off and went to Birmingham just to say I'm here. And he made the statement. He said, I don't know how people go through something like this without having some measure of hope that this is not all there is, that this is not the end of life, that one day I will see her again. And so that's my testimony. That is how I believe the Lord strengthened me during that time to have that hope that one day I'll be reunited with them and that they're in a better place.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
Hi, I'm Erica Bedwell, the Director of Rehab at Covington County Hospital. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services says you have a right to choose the swing bed program that's right for your loved ones. Our patients experience a comforting, supportive, and healing environment in large private rooms. Our swing bed staff is highly skilled and includes board-certified physicians, practitioners, and experienced nursing staff, all working alongside physical, occupational, and speech therapist staff to return your loved ones to the quality of life they deserve.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
The weather's getting warmer, and that means Mississippi blueberries are ready to be picked. Make a day of it with family and friends at one of the many U-Pick farms across the state. Or take home Mississippi-grown blueberries from your local market, because locally grown is what's best for our state. Donate at farmfamiliesms.org to help us spread the word, or find us on Facebook. The Farm Families of Mississippi, our work fuels the world.
At Atmos Energy, we believe affordable, reliable, and efficient natural gas is essential to achieving a low-carbon energy future. We're committed to helping protect the environment by providing smart choice solutions to help customers reduce energy use and lower their carbon footprint. Get a rebate up to $600 off qualifying high-efficiency natural gas appliances, smart thermostats, and weatherization upgrades. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
To hear that response and that you did pick up the pieces, like you talked about, thanks in large part to your faith, to your wife, and to try to finish law school, period, is difficult. You finish law school with a Juris Doctor. You're named president of the student government while in Ole Miss Law School. So after you do pick up the pieces, you push forward, you finish law school. What's next for Philip Gunn after that?
One funny aspect of that, because my parents were killed, they were killed in May of 1988. I was scheduled to go to law school that summer, summer school, and I did not do it just because I had not only the emotions of trying to deal with it, but I had business to tend to. All three of them had died. I was trying to tend to all their business, take care of the home back in Clinton, all of that. So I didn't go to summer school that summer, which caused me to not finish with my class in May of '89. I didn't finish till August of '89. So I like to tell people I finished number 5 in my law school class, which I did, but there are only 10 people who graduated in August, but I still finished number 5. If you tell them that, they're impressed until they find out there's only 10 folks in the class. So I immediately moved back to Clinton. And again, that was a part of my parents dying. Their house, the house I was raised in, was sitting in Clinton. So I thought, how many people 25 years of age have a house? And the house note was $300 a month. They were still paying. They built it in 1972, so we were still, paying on it. And that's what brought us back to Clinton, is we had a house. And, the people in Clinton stepped up during that time and supported us, and the church helped us, and it was just a natural fit for us to come back to the Jackson area. And so that's what brought us back. I got a job here practicing law with Wells, Marble, and Hurst, and I was there for 34 years practicing law with them. So great firm, great people, I have great friends there. I left them recently to go to another firm that does government affairs stuff. I'm not technically practicing the traditional law practice anymore. I'm doing government affairs work. But we plugged into the town of Clinton. Again, that was my hometown, so we already had some established relationships and friendships. I had a church that had stepped up to help us during the time of my parents' death, and it was an easy transition for us to plug in there. So that's what brought us back to Clinton.
So what was the motivation or inspiration to pursue politics and public service? How did that work out?
I never set out to make that as my goal necessarily. People all my life have told me I should be in politics. I never set that out as a goal, but in 2000, they did a census. Everyone will recall, we do a census every 10 years as a nation. And based upon that, we redraw our legislative and congressional districts based on population shifts. The census not only counts the people, but it counts where they are, how many people have moved to an area, how many people have moved away from an area, and all that. And over a 10-year period of time, those numbers get out of whack. In the House of Representatives here in Mississippi, each individual legislator represents about 25,000 people. Each senator represents about 50,000 people. So we're supposed to have a district that's somewhere around 25,000 in size. Over a 10-year period of time, that number's going to get out of whack. We have some high growth areas. We have some declining areas. The Mississippi Delta, for example, has lost about 60,000 people in the last 20 years. They're moving away from there. So you may have a representative whose district is only 13,000 people. Well, you can't be 13,000 people. It's got to be 25. We have a law that says one man, one vote. Your vote's got to carry the same weight as my vote. So if you have a representative who only represents 10,000 people and you got 5 of them, well, that's 50,000 folks. They got 5 votes versus one guy over here who may have 50,000 people. That's just 1 vote. So you got to redraw those districts and get everybody back to a size of 25. Well, in 2000, they redrew the lines and carved Clinton up 5 ways. Clinton is a predominantly Republican town. They gave us 4 Democrats and 1 Republican to represent the entire town. They carved it up like a pie. Well, the mayor and some aldermen and some others, city leaders came to me and said, look, they have cut us up in a way that ruins our effectiveness in the Capitol. We need somebody to step up and run. We're a Republican town. All the mayor and all the aldermen are Republicans. We vote Republican. We need a Republican representing us in Jackson. But now we've got 5 different pieces of 5 different districts, and you just happen to live in the one area where a Republican can get elected. Would you run? And I said, how long do I have to think about it? They said, you got 1 week. The qualifying deadline is a week from today. So I quickly did all the talking I needed to do, talked to my bosses, talked to my wife, talked to my church, and everybody said, yeah, go for it. So I signed up to run in 2003. Actually, the election was, they redrew the lines in 2002, so the first election after that was 2003. And that's when I ran, and my election turned into a very protracted, prolonged process. There were some errors that occurred. It had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to be decided. But I eventually won. And that was 20 years ago. And I've been in the legislature, for the last 20 years. I mentioned earlier that Democrats held control of the House from 1876 to 2012. So for 136 years, the majority of the people in the House were Democrat, and therefore they were electing a Democrat speaker. In 2012, we were able to flip that and got a 3-vote majority. There's 122 members in the House. Half of that is 61. So a majority is 62. 62 is the magic number. If you get 62 votes, you can do anything. We had 64. So we only had the majority by 3 votes, but we were able to hold it together, and I was honored and privileged to be their choice for speaker. And so in the last 12 years, I have been serving as speaker and chose to resign or retire in December. So
when you reflect back on that moment, as we sit here now, you mentioned the significance of it, 136 years since a Republican had served as Speaker of the House. When you reflect on the moment, like now as we sit here and we're reflecting on your career and your life, take me back to that moment when you were elected as House Speaker. How significant is it when you look back at it now?
I don't think I appreciated the significance of it at the moment. I was thrilled that we were able to gain the majority. I was thrilled that we're now going to be able to implement conservative policies that I think are better for the state of Mississippi. The Democrat Party has really gone far to the left from what they were even when I was in college. Even when Bill Clinton was president. I mean, you see a really left turn in the Democratic Party. I don't think that represents the majority of Mississippians in this state. Sure, we have people who believe that, but not as a whole. We are a very conservative state. And so the mere fact that they voted to put a majority of Republicans in the House, I think, was a reflection of the desires of the state of Mississippi. One of the Democrats who was in the leadership came to me after I got elected Speaker and wanted to know why he wasn't a chairman anymore. And I said, look, you've been guiding the ship for the last 20 years, and the people of the state do not like the direction that we're going. This is why your team got voted out of office and they put Republicans in. They want to see a conservative direction in this state. And what we've seen since then, that was in 2012, we had a 3-vote majority. Today, it's a super majority. And even people may not understand the significance of that. There's 79 Republicans in the House today. So it's just grown exponentially even since then. And the majority of Mississippians are Republican. They believe in, even some who identify as Democrats still believe in conservative policies. They believe, I got many of my Democrat colleagues in Mississippi who are pro-life. They do not agree with abortion on demand. They believe in controlled spending. They don't want us to go nuts and just spend crazy. They believe in Second Amendment rights. So we as a state as a whole are very conservative, and those are the kinds of things that we wanted to bring to bear when the Republicans took over in 2012. I think we've done a lot of that over the last 12 years. I'm proud of many of the accomplishments that we've made. There was nobody in front of me. I took off. I thought I was going to score a touchdown. All of a sudden I saw an arm come in front of my face like that. It was Erman Green. He chased me down.
Are y'all ready for us? I'm sorry. Patrick's chasing that girl he was talking about earlier, aren't you? Don't let her pull you in, man. Don't do it. Y'all ready? All right. 3, 2, and 1.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another episode of Audibles with Jason Scarborough.